What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Student Built Startups Podcast, Episode 4. I'm your host, Cameron Stone, entrepreneur and student at UMD. I interview student entrepreneurs to share their stories and business strategies. Today's guest will talk about the process of becoming a self-published author and what's involved with publishing your first book. He has published 2 books, and you can find both of them on Amazon. The first one is Complex Mind, and the second is called Breaking Point. He will be sharing his story and how his education played a role in it. I'm happy to introduce you guys to Sam Shehperd. Hey, Sam, thanks for being on the show. I'm going to have you start off by saying hello to everyone and sharing one crazy but true fact about yourself.
Hi, everyone. Cameron, thanks for having me. I'm Sam Shehperd. I guess crazy fact about me is I couldn't talk till I was 3. So I guess 18 years later, I'm here on a podcast talking, which is great. So yeah.
Yeah, nice. That's a big improvement.
Something like that.
That is kind of crazy. Yeah, till you're 3. Wow. Well, we can jump into our first part of the podcast here. Tell the audience a little bit about your education.
Yeah, so I'm a junior up at UMD. I'm studying political science and criminology. I'm a double major for those 2, so that's kind of my education so far.
Awesome. That's cool. That sounds like a fun kind of degree to study.
Yeah.
So could you share with the audience a little bit about being a self-published author and kind of what's involved with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a pro and a con with self-publishing is you kind of have to create the whole process yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like obviously everyone who writes a book has to like think of the book themselves, and that's no different for regardless of how you get it published, but having to find an independent editor, independent cover artist, and kind of just creating that whole process. So I guess that's what I did personally. I did self-publish on Amazon, which is what I felt was the easiest route for self-publishing, because instead of having to put a down payment for how many books you want, they just print on demand and take the printing costs off your royalty. So yeah, and then I guess for finding the editor, I went on the app Thumbtack. I don't know if you've heard of that or not.
I think I've heard it mentioned before.
Yeah, it's kind of like an app for like side jobs, that kind of thing. So I went on there and basically mentioned my book in the whatever description, and then I reached out to a lot of people reached out to me, kind of had people try out, sort of sent out a sample of my manuscript at the time and try it out, different editors to see how they liked my book, how I liked their style, and obviously pricing as well. So yeah. And then for the cover art, when I was working on the book, probably midway through, I was talking to one of my friends about it. I'm like, well, I got to figure out cover art. And he's like, well, one of my friends out here at school is like really good at painting, and like sent me some of his paintings. So then I connected with him, and then he made exactly what I wanted out of it. So
that's awesome. Yeah, connections are really good to have when you're working on stuff by yourself, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
How much does it cost, like range-wise, as far as like finding an editor or cover art or whatnot through kind of the places that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think well, for the cover art, it was more flexible because it was not really like a business sort of venture, so I paid like $50 for the cover art. And then for the editing itself, there was anywhere from $250 to, I think one person tried charging me like $2,500.
Oh.
So I mean, it's a big ballpark right there. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. How has your education played a role in becoming a self-published author?
Yeah. So I don't think like there's an exact class or like course I've taken that like will contribute to that. I think it's just the overall, just like learning and just letting your like mind grow through things. That's kind of what I talk about in my first book, Complex Mind.
Okay.
And I think just like the experience of being at college and experiencing all those changes and things like really helped shaped my mind for writing the book.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
For sure. Kind of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone on a regular basis helps with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like one thing too is like after high school, it's not really having that like, you don't really feel that social structure as much, like, oh, these are the popular kids, these are the lamos. Like it's kind of just like everyone's just people.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing too, is just like, all right, I'm gonna go write this book and I'm not gonna be afraid to get spoofed by like the cool kids or something like that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And since you mentioned your book, what is your book about?
Yeah, so my first book, Complex Mind, is about, I guess, the mind, but it's really how I've learned to view the mind through, I guess, changes over time, as well as like just creativity and how like society sometimes lacks like how people kind of just go for the easy route rather than being creative themselves. And it also deals with like interactions with people that are complex, interactions with people that are more simple, and I guess just like the overall impacts that things and people and events have towards the mind.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds really interesting because there's a lot of different types of people out there and kind of how they interact with other people. And yeah, people are just complex.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're all complex in our own way. So that's kind of what I'm trying to show through the book.
Mm-hmm. What would you say is the most challenging thing for you when it came to getting your first book published?
I think, like I mentioned before, with the whole process, I think that wasn't a struggle. It could have been worse, but also could have been more smooth. Like now that I'm used to it, it's more routine to like reach out to people about things like that. Whereas like when I was first figuring it out, it's kind of scrambling things together at times. But I think that's part of it. And also I guess the fear of kind of being like judged or spoofed, I guess, as I said before, for like the first book, because I didn't really tell many people about the book until it was out. I don't want people to be like, oh, this kid's writing a book kind of thing. I'd rather be like, wow, this kid wrote a book. You know, it's a big difference in the narrative between that. So that was probably the biggest fear, was just getting that first one out there, and like that first month or two, just kind of being there in shock and just kind of seeing what people would have to say about it. So
yeah, for sure. And I would say that that's probably one of the most common fears for young people who are going out on their own venture. I definitely have that fear starting this podcast.
yeah,
But I'm trying to use this as a platform where young entrepreneurs and young people who are driven to do their own thing can come on here, and we can show other people our age that it can be done and that they don't have to fear as much. So I totally agree with you there. Have you leveraged being a student in your book publishing process?
I guess so. Yeah. So I guess with one of the books I'm actually working on right now is about the student perspective within like higher education. So like within colleges, universities. So I guess with that, I've really connected with different administrators and librarians and finding more resources for that. So definitely in that aspect, yeah.
Yeah, and that's something I would definitely recommend to students who are in college trying to start their own thing, is to take advantage of those resources at school, because you're paying to have them anyways, so might as well use them for as many things as you can. What has been the most rewarding thing for you as far as publishing one of your books has been?
I think just like being recognized for something that like I created. I guess like I sort of like I mentioned, creating that whole process, like being a part of a team or like a sports team, like you're like, that's the process and you're just like kind of a part of it, but like creating that whole process and then like being recognized for that, I think that's really like humbling to me, definitely.
Yeah. Do you prefer being creative as far as like maybe writing books or expressing yourself more than working like, let's say, a 9-to-5 job? Do you prefer the creative output more than having a structured workday?
Definitely. I mean, that's the dream someday, but I mean, you obviously have to work somewhere to get to that point, but it's definitely nice being flexible with your, not just hours, but just flexible with your work, what you're doing. And like with me personally, I'm working on like multiple like books at the same time, whether it be like a full novel or like little poetry books or somewhere in between. So it's kind of nice having that flexibility to just jump from thought to thought.
Yeah, cool. What would you say is unique about your books compared to others?
I think mine, like knowing me, I guess like the more you read the books, like more books I come out with, the more people will learn about me, even though it's not directly about me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of like indirect messages, but also just direct messages about yourself and things like that.
So we're getting close to the halfway point here, so we're going to take a moment for a brief advertisement. If you're looking to create a website for your business that you have started, the first step is to purchase a domain name and web hosting. What I personally use when I create a website is Bluehost. They are my number one recommended web hosting provider. Every website that I have ever created, I have purchased my domain name through Bluehost, and I have used them as my hosting service provider. They are super easy to use. They are a partner with WordPress, so the compatibility between them is great, and they offer a killer deal for new members who are signing up with them. As of January 2020, for your first year with Bluehost, you can start as low as $2.95 a month, and you will get 50 gigabytes of storage, unlimited bandwidth, a free domain name, and a 99.9% uptime guarantee, as well as some of the best customer service out there. If web hosting and a domain name is something that you need, go check out the link in the show notes and take your first step towards creating your website. Now that we're back, we'll switch over to maybe talking a little bit about what's involved with becoming a self-published author and that kind of stuff. So if you could recommend like one first step someone could take when they're wanting to publish a book, what would that be?
Well, I think there's two ways to view that. So I think the first one, obviously, just to write the book. I think the biggest thing is when you have ideas, write them down, because that's how I wrote my first book. As I just wrote things down in my notes, and then from there just grew on it. Like if I went to wrote those down, I probably wouldn't have be where I'm at today. So that's the biggest thing, is like even when you're thinking like middle of the night, midday, like just pull out your phone, just type something up, like a thought quick. Like that's the biggest thing for the writing aspect. But I guess with publishing, just like look at your options, do research on the different publishing or self-publishing things. I preferred Amazon, but that's not for everyone, obviously. Some people might want to go try to do traditional publishing right away, or they might want to try to reach out to a publishing company that's kind of not traditional, but not self-publishing either. It's like a middle ground. So they might want to do that as well. So I think just really doing the research on where your book will best lie.
Okay. Why did you choose to do self-publishing versus traditional publishing?
To be honest, I was pretty impatient. I didn't want to doing research on it, like hearing that there could be a lot of drawback from traditional publishers. And I guess just working on this book for a summer, I just kind of wanted it to be out there, not have to worry about it before school year started, And that was the biggest thing is Amazon. It takes like 24 hours once you submit it on there, and then it'll be approved and up for sale. So yeah,
that's awesome. How do you promote your books, and how have you kind of built a quote brand around yourself and your books?
Yeah, good question. So I guess the biggest thing I do right now is social media. I kind of just throw it on all social media platforms because there's different people that see it on different platforms. Obviously, there's some cross viewing, but that's just a good thing, I guess. Get the word out there. But that's the first part. Some things I've been working on recently is working to make an email list. And then I'm also working with a friend to make my website for the author brand as well. So that's the biggest part.
Yeah, for sure. I also saw in one of your social media posts, you had like a book signing event. Could you talk about that just a little bit?
Oh, yeah. How could I forget? So yeah, I did have a book signing a couple weeks ago, just for people in the community to come buy books, or if they already bought the book, I could just sign it and just have a conversation. So that's a starting point. Obviously, it wasn't huge. There wasn't thousands of people there, but I mean, you have to start small. Yeah,
for sure. It's probably nice to just reach out to people and interact with everybody who's reading your book. It's probably a good feeling to have that connection.
Exactly. And I actually, one of the people that came who knew my mom wanted me to do like a kind of interview like this, but like for like a book review. So I kind of found something from there too, which is always a plus.
Yeah, that's cool. How would you recommend promoting a new book or any sort of creative content that somebody has came up with?
Yeah, I think just finding the platform where you can connect to people the most, whether that's social media, whether that's just in person communicating with people, or if there's something else that you're able to do to reach out to people. So really just finding your platform for marketing.
Do you see yourself in the future maybe building a business based around your books, or is it more about just doing what you enjoy?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, obviously there's that dream aspect of wanting to just be an author, and that's my 9 to 5, as you could say. But there's also that passion that I still have behind it, and I don't want that to change either. So
one thing that I'll bring up is working on this podcast. Like I really like talking with people, so that's kind of like what I'm passionate about, and just kind of drawing knowledge from others. But on the other hand, there's like a lot more editing and a lot more time spent on the back end sort of stuff versus what I'm really like passionate about. Is there a similar thing like that with writing books?
I mean, there is a lot of like work put in with like behind the scenes, I guess, where with editing, and there's a lot of the nitty gritty things you don't think about with self-publishing books. Like I think for my first book, I spent about 10 hours just like formatting pages. So there is some back end things now I think about that can really suck, I guess.
Because I know anytime you do something new for the first time, it's like you jump into it and you don't realize like how much is actually involved, and you just get kind of overwhelmed. And that's where kind of having a structure comes in, is you can lay things out in a nice structure, and your next time around it goes much smoother.
Definitely.
What kind of tips can you give for the book writing process?
I guess like I said before, just writing down your ideas and don't be afraid to like use your ideas for something, whether that's books or whether that's a podcast or something else, just finding your niche in general and just going through with it, writing it down.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think right when you're writing books, trying to differentiate yourself from others and having your own unique writing style can really benefit you in the process?
I guess I guess I just kind of write straightforward. Like everyone has their own specific style.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have like an aim how I'm wording things exactly.
All right. Yeah, you're just kind of letting things flow as they normally would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're going to move on to the last section of the interview. It's called the Fast Five section. So I'm just going to ask 5 questions, and we'll go through them at a moderate pace. If you want to elaborate on one, that's totally fine. So first question is, what is the most valuable class or course that you have taken?
I guess for high school, it was my English class junior year. That's kind of what geared me to enjoy writing. So when I wrote this book again, it was kind of like coming back to my junior year of high school. So that's probably the most memorable for me, just because for my writing, I guess.
Okay. Do you have maybe a favorite class revolving around your field that you're studying right now in college?
Yeah, I guess I've enjoyed a lot of my political science classes. I'm trying to think of one specifically. I guess my voting campaigns and elections class was enjoyable, especially just learning about, I guess, campaigns and elections right before the election and stuff. So
Question 2 is, what is okay, hold on. What is one book that you would recommend?
well, no, I actually have okay, so first off, I do have my 2 right here. So I do have Complex Mind and then Breaking Point. And then I also do have one I didn't write that my friend gave me to read. It's called Mind Gym. It's Mind Gym by Gary Mack. It's about kind of like the mentality for athletes that they need to have to succeed.
All right, that's cool.
Yeah, so there's your answer.
Yeah, there we are. Got a triple whammy there.
Yeah.
All right. What is one business tool, or in your case, maybe book writing tool, publishing tool that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think Instagram and Facebook are big ones. I guess Facebook too, because that's how I can reach out to like my family, like aunts, uncles, and then like their friends, like my parents' friends. Because I've gotten like a tremendous amount of support from my parents' friends and my family too. So I think Facebook was the big one for me. But also like Instagram and Snapchat, like they help get people to help get their attention as well. Because not every 20, 21-year-old's on Facebook all the time. So.
Yeah. I do agree with you that Facebook can be very resourceful by kind of using the connections of your connections, because Facebook makes it pretty easy to search those out.
Yeah.
Question number 4 is, how do you personally like keep on track and maybe schedule your time?
I guess that's a work in progress, but balancing out writing and school and other things I'm involved with. But I mean, that's what it comes down to, is just making time for writing versus making time for studying or that kind of thing. So that's definitely the biggest work in progress with this whole process, is how to balance everything out and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What would you say that you prioritize the most right now?
Probably pretty split with I try to be pretty split with it, with school, with student government, and then writing. But like some days the writing, I guess the writing for me is like a rhythm aspect. So like sometimes when I'm in a rhythm with my writing, like when I have thoughts flowing, then I just write them down. That might take up time that I should be using for the other 2 things. But then sometimes when I have a full packed day with school and student government meetings and those kind of things, then the writing isn't really there that whole day.
Last question here is, when do you feel most productive?
I guess just referring back to the rhythm part, I guess it just can just snap anytime. Like I've written decent parts of my books like past midnight, just like sitting in bed. And I guess just other times during the day when I'm just like focused, just in the zone about it. So there's really no like specific time. It just kind of hits.
You just kind of fall into that flow once in a while.
Yeah.
Well, we are about to wrap up. You gave some great information about becoming a self-published author and what's involved with that. But before we wrap up, if you could provide one main takeaway that you'd like the audience to remember.
Yeah, I guess just don't be afraid to share your ideas to the world, and then also to write them down so you don't forget them.
There's some great advice. All right. So where can we find more about you and your books?
The website's still in progress, so I guess my Instagram for now. So that's Sam Shehperd 1.
Where can we find your books?
They're on Amazon if you search Complex Mind by Sam Shehperd or Breaking Point by Sam Shehperd.
All right. Great. Thanks for being on the show, Sam.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your time.
I'm really glad that I got to share Sam's story with you guys. Thanks again for being on the show, Sam. And thank you to everyone listening right now. I truly appreciate your support in this journey. And if you like what I'm doing, hit that subscribe button and go check out studentbuiltstartups.com. All of our content will be uploaded there, and you can find out more about me and this podcast. Thanks again, and I'll catch you on the next episode.